All right, listeners. Well, I have a special treat for you. I didn't know Paul, but I was introduced to him, and we talked in the pre-trial. This guy sounds. I mean, we're like. I feel like I've known this guy now that I've only talked to him. I really like the way he thinks, the way my preliminary read on this guy is he's a great guy. So now that I've kind of embarrassed you there, Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing really good. And thank you for those nice words.
Well, Paul, Magrone, I even ask.
People always botch it a little bit. It's Magrone, Magrone.
And I even asked you in the pre-talk, and I still messed it up. You're out of the Orlando area, correct?
Yes, sir. Central Florida market.
Okay, cool. And sorry, I'm coughing, and the cleaning people are here. I'm hoping they don't come in here while I'm here. But tell us a little bit. I read a little bit of your bio, did a little bit of stalking, and your background, how you became a home inspector, and your bio is fantastic too. By the way, I saw where you were like you had a lot of pest control, and you've done some other things. And then the last paragraph says, of all the positions I've had, the best one is being a customer, because that made me realize what, and I was like, that was that was brilliant, but anyway, give us your background. How did you become a home inspector?
Well, actually, the customer part of it's true. I mean, most of my life I've been in different disciplines, but customer service has always been a big part of almost everything I've been part of, And one great guy had taught me a long time ago that I should be reading people and understanding, with empathy, like where they're coming from, what their needs are, how to help them the most, and all these things, and that's what did it for me. Like my background as a carpenter, I did a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of stuff like that, and then I was into different things. I even ran a company called Invisible Fence down here in Orlando for a little while. And that was just a dog training company. There was a technical side to that, wiring these fences, and then there was a dog training side to that. But in dealing with people and customers who love their pets and stuff like that, I got to know a little bit more about compassion, empathy, and just understanding. And when I got to the point where I hurt myself, our friend Joyce, who was a real estate agent, and my wife both thought that I would do good in this industry. So I kind of ran with that. I kind of followed. The first person I spoke to back in like 2004 was Nick Romico over at Internachi. Mm-hmm. He was I just called the number, and he answered the phone, and he talked to me for a half hour, and he kind of talked me into looking at their website and talked to me about what I need to do. Spent a lot of time with me, and I was like, wow, this guy's really cool.
Yeah, especially he's got like 25,000 members. For him to spend a half hour with you, that is pretty cool.
I thought it was pretty impressive. I mean, the guy's a huge success, and he still took the time, and that goes back nearly 20 years ago. But from that point forward, I just started to be a sponge. I networked with people. I started Joyce, the real estate friend I had. She took me out on one of her sales and had me watch an inspection in progress, which I thought was a really big blessing to me. I got to see someone else do it. And I kind of got a gauge from there. And then she sent me his inspection report. Now, back then, just for the guys who were younger and know all this technological stuff now, back then, this inspection report might have had like 3 pictures in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A whole different world back then.
Yeah, digital pictures weren't even really a thing at that point, were they? I don't think.
Not really. They started to become a thing as the market grew. A very interesting dynamic happened. Each guy was trying to outdo the next guy, and how our industry is. So one thing led to the next, to the next, to the next. And the one thing I learned as I treaded along the way here was that the one thing was going to become impossible to do is adhere and stick to the standards of practice. As much as we all want to do that, it became really hard because you get these questions from the real estate agents and from customers about things that are not within the scope of a home inspection.
Right.
So what are you to do in that situation? So I made it a point to learn whatever I could. Whenever someone asked me something I didn't know the answer to, I went out and learned it, and then I incorporated it into my process. That didn't mean it went into every report. What it meant was that I would be better prepared next time for that question.
Right.
No matter who was going to ask it, right?
Right.
But this has been a great evolution for me, and dealing with people is something I love to do, and that's the one aspect of this business that I would love to share with other inspectors is the people part of it. Because you could be the best inspector in the world, but the communication, that's got to be there. The empathy's got to be there. Understanding their needs has got to be there. And then the follow-up has got to be there.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
how many times have you gotten called after an inspection saying, hey, Preston, I got a question about this. And it's like 2 weeks later, you know, and you
A
want to be
lot.
there to answer the question.
A
Right?
lot. Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
You know, so
Two
there's a
weeks.
lot.
I love those calls if they're like 2 weeks or less. It's if they're 6 months or more, that's not going to be a fun call.
You know what? You're in South Carolina.
South Carolina, technically in North Carolina, but we do both. Yeah, right here on the line. Yeah,
So you
Charlotte.
probably have some of your customers are probably from out of the country and out of the area like ours are.
Right, right.
And some of them will buy a property, we inspect it, and they'll get with you a year later, 10 months later. They have never been there yet. Now they're looking at the report 10 months later.
Oh, wow.
Just to find out like what something is, where it is, how it works, that type of thing. Does that happen to you? It happens to us a lot.
Not too much. Usually if we get one 10 months later, like, hey, my hot water heater blew up and you didn't tell us about that. And I'm like, did it work fine for 9 months? You know, those kind of calls, but
we get them too.
Yeah, cool. Well, all right. So 2004, you started making, and in your bio, it looks like you had some pest control background too. I was doing a presentation on carpenter bees, as you can tell by my background here. I hadn't changed that out yet. But so in 2004, and I know Florida's licensed now. Was it licensed then? How did you? I mean, I know you had experience being a carpenter and stuff, but how did you? What'd you do for training? And I know now you've got a whole team and all that. So how did you get from deciding you wanted to go this direction to the team that you have now? I guess step by step.
Just a caveat, so a real quick learning curve comment. Those guys who are planning to be successful in this business, make sure that you have a plan for when you hit that moment in time where you go from that sweet spot where you're doing just as much work as you want to and enjoying your life every moment of the day to when it explodes and now you can't keep up. Have a plan in place, because that definitely cost me a little bit of time. I ended up just for a short stint with a panic attack. I was trying too much, took on too much at one time. If I had planned ahead better, I would have been better off. So just a word of advice there.
Right there.
Yeah. Very hard to do. But back to 2004 and pest control and how I got into this. After the conversation with Nick, I went to Internachi and found that they had a world of education stuff. I mean, what you remember, everything there is free education wise. It's an endless resource. So that's where I gained a lot of my knowledge, the technical knowledge of electrical and plumbing and structural and roofing and stuff like that. And then, to be honest with you, that was very helpful. But then I don't think you can beat experience in the field. Once you get into the field, that's when the real training begins. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And I was fortunate to have a couple of mentors in my life. One was Bill Smith with IFREC Real Estate Schools, and the other was Greg Bell over in Titusville. And these guys were just like you are and just like I'm trying to be. We just want to be there to help people succeed. They were there for me for that. In pest control, I met this guy, Lou Cortez. Lou's like one of my mentors too. The guy's phenomenal. And he owned a pest control company. He's now since retired, but he got me into a position over at a big pest control company here in Florida. And I got with them doing general household pests for a little while, you know, and then some WDO stuff like training. And through that whole prism of everything, I learned that whole side of the industry pretty quickly. So between what Nachi was making available and what I learned in pest control, and then what I learned from Greg and Bill, little by little, all these incredible things surrounding me started to help me be better at what I was doing.
Right.
And as I moved forward, I reached the point where I had to bring on an inspector. So who's the first person I called? Bill Smith over at IFREC Real Estate School. I'm like, what students do you have that you would use?
Right.
And he's like, he said to me, I'll help you. So he ended up working with me for a little while, helping us.
Oh, wow. And then he's a trainer on top of that?
He's a teacher. Wow. And he has his own home inspection company.
That was a win. Yeah.
Oh, it was incredible guy, nicest guy on the planet. But then as you grew, I mean, I started to bring on, I had 3 inspectors before I even considered having an office. So I'm in the field, standing on one leg in the attic, answering the phone, right? You've all been there.
Appointment, writing in the dirt. I did all.
Writing in the dirt, you know, trying to remember it all. But that was the part I want to just kind of share with other inspectors, whoever may be listening. Have a plan for that. You don't want to be that guy. That was when, unfortunately, my wife ended up entering our company. And we ended up setting up an office using ISN software. And then from there, we just kind of grew a little bit at a time. We're only a 6 inspector firm, right? It's not a huge firm, but if you look at our reviews and stuff, you'll see somehow, by the grace of God, probably a lot of praying, because that I did every morning, I still do every day,
Me too.
right? You got to incorporate that into I believe, into your day.
Right.
But that's how we kind of just learned as we went along the way. And then I can't emphasize enough the in the field training part of it, because if you got guys like yourself and guys like myself and Bill and Greg and guys like that out there, you can reach out to them and say, hey, I ran into this today. What do you think?
Right.
And that might happen 10 times a month. And that's the best education, in my view, you could get, is bouncing things off of people.
That's awesome. I want to add something to that too. And you may already do this, I don't know. And for anybody listening, like once you get a couple of inspectors, I don't know if you guys have a group text or something. We started using Discord, and I know some people use Slack, where your inspectors can communicate amongst each others. Because, I started thinking, we got a whole lot of experience here, and, we should take advantage of that. So, there's constant chatter on there every day. Somebody will take a picture like, hey, what do y'all think about this? Because, one guy may not be as, something electrical, and we got one guy who, was a former electrician. So he chimes in but you get the group knowledge of it. Plus I get really good pictures that I can use for presentations and stuff.
There you go. Yeah.
So I don't know do you guys use any kind of group chat? And if not, check out Discord or I've never used Slack, but I know some people do. And the cool thing is you can do different, like different threads. Like we'll have inspection questions, report questions, and it's like so that way, because when you first start out, it's like you got to answer every question, and it becomes great when you don't have to answer every question. And quite frankly, I got a lot of people that work with me that are smarter than me. I mean, that's not too hard, but but do you guys use a group checks or anything like that?
We don't use any specific app or program, but the guys, it's only 6 guys, so we all have our contact information, and the guys are very active. One of the guys that used to work with me here, Levi Toderick, is now down in South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale. He's AccuBuilt Home Inspections, but he was with us for the longest time. And even to this day, what you just said, he'll reach out to me or he'll reach out to one of our group. I mean, just because guys branch off into their own, you know what I mean? And by the way, there's nothing more rewarding than that, to watch someone that trained with you find success. I mean, he's about 4 or 5 hours south of me. So it's not like we're competitors. We're still on the same team, so to speak. But yeah, he still reaches out. We don't use any special app, but the guys all have each other's contact information and things like that.
Yeah. No, and I have a lot of guys that went out on their own, and I'm fine with that as long as we parted on the right. If you ever go out on your own, just do it the right way. Don't stab somebody in the back, especially if they trained you. And just go to them and say, hey, I'm thinking about going on my own. How can we still be friends and help each other? Because even when you do that, you still need to help each other. Sometimes you're too full. I mean, you've got to have competitors out there. So think about this. No matter where you are, you're going to have competitors. What if a lot of those competitors are all really good friends with you and you're friends with them? I mean, isn't that better than having, I think, because it's just a win-win. You know what I mean? I mean, every coach, no matter what they coach, football, basketball, whatever, every successful coach was an assistant coach somewhere else at some point. And the really good programs, like, kind of take care of their own. You know what I mean? Like you'll see an assistant coach become a head coach at another place, usually a smaller college, and they'll purposely, they'll play them because it usually brings a lot of money to that small program, even though they're going to get whooped, but they take that whooping because they get a lot of money that helps their program. Does that make sense? They're doing a favor to their former thing. So, why don't we do that in home inspection? I don't get it. Some of it sounds like you do.
Actually, everything that you said, I agree with 100%. And I would rather have allies in the industry, so even if they're within 2 miles of me, than enemies. You know what I
Right.
mean? And truthfully, there's times when guys get hurt, like our group, you know, when something happens, a guy's on vacation and you're too darn busy. And if you can't handle it in-house, think of the advantages of having great relationships with 5 or 7 inspectors in your area. You could just reach out, hey, how busy are you? Can you handle something for us?
Yeah.
You know, as long as you have the mutual respect and that honesty between the two of you. All these years I've been doing this, I've only had one inspector that we just didn't align,
Right.
and whatever, for whatever reason, it didn't work out. But everybody else that I've had that's in our group, and I'm sure that you probably feel similarly, like you have a few may not have worked out, but for the most part, everyone that's in our group, these are high character guys, good ethical guys. They work hard, good family men. You know what I mean? They're out there doing their thing. And by the way, I don't want to shortchange the office either, because my wife and her team, they do an amazing job of keeping the guys busy, scheduled, handling the customer calls, all that. So you got to have such a really good team in place for it all to happen. But if a few of them are going to start their own business, there's no better thing. They can't handle it. Let's go ahead and call John, or let's go ahead and call, you know, so and so. And that's exactly what we try to do here.
Right. Awesome. Well, and for all the listeners out there, Paul has written a book. We're going to get to that in just a second. And we definitely want to tell people where they can get that. But before we get to that, I do want to ask you, you mentioned, because I was going there, you mentioned the girls in the office do a great job of keeping everybody busy and booked. So primarily, if you don't mind me asking, what things, and for all the listeners out there, what tips would you give them? I know word of mouth is the best, you know, once you've been in business a while, but other than that, how do you market your business, or what recommendations would you give for the new guys out there trying to get some business?
The best thing you could do is just build relationships. You know, you could spend a lot of money on advertising and ads and stuff like that, but the reality is that's only going, in this industry anyway, that's only going to yield so much business. The
Right.
way that I've always found success is to make myself feel interested in other people, and go ahead and introduce myself, meet them, ask if I can come in for a meeting. If they're holding an event, be there, support them, you know, be passionate about their causes. I have one wonderful person that we've been doing business with since like 2007, and she started a nonprofit charity. And the first thing that we did, even though we're like the best of friends, is, hey, you know, Debbie, let us go ahead and donate to this. Tell us how you want us to be able to be a part of this to help you find success here. I think the more that you're willing to give to others, and especially your time in teaching people, that comes back threefold. And when you slow down, never look outside your circle that hard. Try to reach inside of the people who already trust you. They're your biggest fans. They will tell other people about you. And
Right.
as their teams grow, your business will grow. You know, so
Absolutely.
I think building relationships really is the ticket to successfully marketing your business, more than running ads, for example.
Gotcha. Hey guys, thanks for listening. I appreciate you listening to the podcast. I hope you're getting value out of it. I'm sponsoring, I guess, myself. I'm not really selling anything, but hey man, I thought I'd just tell you about, I do a little art on the side, PrestonSandlin.com. Check it out if you got some time. Kind of do some cool looking stuff, I think, but I understand that art is subjective. Also, I'll follow you back if you follow me on TikTok. I'm Inspector Crazy Pants. I'm Inspector Crazy Pants on Instagram. We have two on Instagram, Inspector Crazy Pants and Home Inspection Carolina. We are also, Home Inspection Carolina on Facebook, and you can check out our website, homeinspectioncarolina.com. But you guys follow me, I'll follow you back. Comment, I'll try to comment back. I think it helps everybody's algorithm. So without further ado, I'll let you get back to the podcast. I just want to say I appreciate you listening, and hopefully we'll see each other sometime at a conference. Thanks a lot. Well, I know you've got that in your book, and we've got to talk about that. So tell us about, we talked a little bit in the pre-talk. Tell us about your book. And obviously, I'm sure you've got that and lots of other words of wisdom. I mean, I love to hear this guy talk, because everything he says, I'm like, yep. I agree. So tell us about your book, what's in your book, what made you write it, and how people can find it.
Well, thank you for giving me the plug on that. The book is called The Business of Home Inspection. And basically, it's a book that contains a lot of information. about communication. The title makes you think maybe it's about home inspection, and it is, but it isn't. What made me write it was I knew that over the years that I've been doing this, I found a niche for myself. That's a beautiful thing about this business. I was a musician years ago, still am today, and one
Oh,
of the
wow.
things I really love is creativity. I love it when there's an industry that allows so many people to do the same thing, but yet so differently, right?
Right.
So why not capitalize on your individual abilities? Down here in Florida, we're really fortunate. We're able to have a lot of that creative license with how we do business. So what this book was written about was I've known a lot of guys in the trades, and one of the areas they don't really have a lot of practice in maybe is communication and conversation.
Right.
So what I'm trying to do in this book is really just open up people's minds who are interested in learning that part of it to the value of that, to be able to speak with people, to read people, to understand their needs and incorporate it into your process, to network with different groups of people, realtors, contractors, what have you, because it's those things I believe that really make you stand out in this business. And each individual is going to be different than the next. But these principles in the book, they're designed to help enhance whatever you bring to the table and maybe help you learn to strengthen some weaknesses you might have in other areas. Like I know I have a ton of weaknesses. If I want to know what they are and be reminded, I just ask my wife. She'll list
I
them.
started to say,
right?
I was thinking that exactly thing. Oh, she'll tell
Right?
you.
They're
She
really
knows
good
what
at
my
that.
blind spots are, and there's a bunch of them.
And there's a bunch of them. But you know what? The one reason we find success is if you're fortunate enough to have that in your life, that's a huge advantage. So to me, the biggest strength the home inspector can have is to know their weaknesses and then learn how to improve on the ones they feel that they need to improve on to be able to build their business better. But this book, the motivation was, I'm 54 years old. I've been doing this nearly 20 years. I found a way to be successful at it. I'm very proud of the group that we built. And make no mistake about it, it's a team. This is a great team of people that built this, not just an individual. But we all do things differently under the same philosophy, trying to elevate our level of customer service and communication. And that's kind of what the book is about, how to do that. Some of the things you'll hear home inspectors and contractors say about one another are not so nice, right? You'll
Those
hear
forums can get a little rough.
they can get a little rough, but the worst feeling in the world is when a contractor in your market says your home inspector don't know what he's talking
He's
about.
An idiot. He got his license on the back of a matchbook cover. I've heard all that.
Right. And you don't need to hear that. I mean, sometimes you can avoid it, but for the times you can avoid it, that's what the book's about. Just network with people in our industry. When people need an inspection in our area, we're fortunately one of the companies that the contractors will recommend, which is great. Our company right now, we work for 2 builders as a mediator. In other words, if there's a conflict of something people don't agree on, they'll have us come and do the inspection. The builder will pay for the inspection just to get a fair opinion of a situation. So, but that takes time to build. You have to build trust and credibility, and how you do that is networking and communication. So this book has little to do with home inspection, as much as I would love it to be more technical, but more to be more on the communication side, because I really think that that's where people need the most help in our industry. Some are great at it, don't get me wrong, but sharing what I've learned for the right group, maybe some people can use this. So that's what I'm hoping.
Awesome. So what's the name of it again, and where can they find it?
It's The Business of Home Inspection. And they could actually get it on Inspector Outlet, which is the InterNACHI website.
Okay.
Where people buy tools and books and stuff. They can get it on also Facebook Marketplace, but we only decided to put it on a couple places. I'm enjoying the ability to actually reach out individually to different inspectors and meet them personally, hand them the book, and just talk to them, because mentorship involves more than just putting a book out there and say, here you go. It involves making yourself available for questions. So if the guys are interested, Inspector Outlet's probably your best bet for it, but there's going to be more to come. We're going to be doing some interesting things over the next few years.
Cool. And while I'm on that, and I'm going to circle at the very end, I'm going to circle back and make sure we say that again. But what's your, for guys who like what they're hearing, I mean, I don't know how you could not like what you're hearing. What's your website? Could they check you out? Maybe go on Facebook, give you some likes. That probably help your SEO a little bit. What's your website or in Facebook thing too, or if you got that.
It's PJM, like Paul John Michael
Okay.
-inc.com.
Okay.
They could just check it out. I mean, you know what the nice thing is, the way the website is laid out. It's not the best in the world, but it's certainly come a long way from back in 2006 or whenever I got it first done. But you know, we have a meet our team page, and there's samples, reports for the guys, their bios on the guys.
Well, your About Us was probably one of the best ones, because every time I do a podcast, I try to do a little stalking to, I want to know who I'm talking to here. And so I'm not completely, I read a lot of About Us. I just went to it, wasn't expecting much. I didn't mean it. I don't mean that in a bad way, but I'm just, let me figure out what their thing is. And I read it. I was like, wow, that's probably one of the best About Us pages I've read. So if you guys want to see how to do that, copy him, but make it your own.
Yeah, identity is everything. Definitely, get all the best ideas and create your own identity for sure. But There's so many good guys out there, honestly. And I mean, that's really another thing. Just encouraging what you're doing is fantastic, because if we can encourage more experienced people when they reach this age, or however you want to phrase that, however you want to say that, to share knowledge. The young guys, they're coming in and they're probably doing a bang up job with what they already know, but enhancing that ability is what people like yourself and myself, I think, are trying to do.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on all your success and on that book. I hope you sell a lot of copies, because I'm going to buy one. But I do want to turn the page here just a second. Sure. On the flip side of success, success doesn't just happen. There's a lot of failures along the way. You fail your way to success. And I always tell people, people ask, well, how'd you, well, I did everything wrong first. So it was a process of elimination. But tell me, and again, I did not give Paul the script. I used to do that in the old days, but now I just go shoot from the hip. They're getting the questions for the first time. Tell me a time, if you can think of one, where you failed, and what did you learn from it? Business would be great since it's business, but if it's personal, that's okay too. But does anything come to mind, a time that you failed, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, the first thing, I think the first major failure I had was not having a business plan to anticipate growing. Because I'll tell you, Lou Cortez, the mentor I told you about earlier, the pest control guy, he had said to me, Paul, you got to put something in place for you to be able to handle these phone calls. You're going to kill yourself, if you don't do this. And I kind of I put it off. I didn't listen. So one of the biggest problems I had early on was I had an ego where I didn't listen as much as I should have. And that was a big problem, right? Yeah. But what happened was I didn't listen, and it caught up to me. And I ended up in the hospital having a panic attack because I was just too overwhelmed. And it didn't have to happen. If I would have just opened up my mind and listened to the advice of someone 20 years older than me with more experience than me, I wouldn't have had to go through that. And then there was another one. Do you have time for one more?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
This is kind of great story, actually. When you first get into business and you're learning, I think all guys try to be Mr. Inspector. Like, they go out there and they're like writing all this stuff and creating these reports. And sometimes they go a little too far to one side, right? So I had this real estate agent who had a listing, and I was the inspector for the buyer at her listing. So I did this report, and I thought I did a really great job. I was just getting my legs under me. I was feeling real good. This is back maybe about 2006 or so. So I'm out marketing myself about a week later, and I go into this real estate office with my business card, and that listing agent is in the office, in her office. Uh-oh. So she hears me at the desk.
Uh-oh.
So I hear, all of a sudden I hear the walking sound of high heels.
And it's probably got a purpose, like a very
with intent, right?
Yeah.
She's like, I want to talk to you, just like that. She's like, come with me, and I didn't know.
Well, at least she didn't do it in front of other people, but
no, she made it clear that I was going to get a lashing of some kind.
You felt like you were in the principal's office, right?
Oh man, I tell you, I'll just never forget. But it was the biggest mistake that I made, and that this particular action helped me understand things better. She sat me down, gave me a real estate contract, highlighted things, said, you read this, and when you're done, I want you to come get me. Now, I never met this woman before. She was like about maybe 5'5", blonde hair in high heels, like with like tremendous presence in the room for someone of such small stature.
Yeah.
But I did what she said. And then she said, I'm going to use you next time. And I better
Wow.
see improvement. That's what she said.
Wow.
So I screwed up by being too overzealous in my inspecting. And she had some real valid points. And I looked over what I did and I'm like, wow, man, I really botched that one. Right. But thank God for people like that. And then thank God for the ability to learn. What I learned there is, you know what, I better listen to people, because instead of having this ego where I shut people out,
Yeah.
I started to realize I better start listening. Maybe if I listen, I'll learn more. And
That's one of the coolest stories I've heard. That's crazy. That's crazy. Did you
she
wind up
still
doing?
uses us. She
I
still
was going to
uses us
ask
to this
that.
day.
I
Yeah.
was going to ask that. Wow. Probably one of your biggest evangelists too, I bet.
She's fantastic, and she's very successful, and she's one of these people that you can always ask advice, and she's happy to help you. In the beginning, one of the things that was hard for us to do is, as my team grew, to convince people who trusted me to use the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hurdle that guys are going to face at some point when they grow.
Mm-hmm.
But when they finally realize that using one of your guys instead of calling another company when they trust you is probably a better avenue for them to go, rather than reaching out to other companies and maybe not having as good of an experience for whatever reason. But once that opened up and they trusted us to, hey, try Jason or try Bill or try whatever. And they
Do
did.
you ever
And
bring Jason or Bill along with you, like sometimes to try to wean them off? Just curious.
I only during training, I really didn't bring the guys out and spend a lot of time with them unless it was productive time.
Right.
And some of them we introduced on site to the realtors and they did remember them. But even then, there was a reluctancy to let someone new take the wheel.
Yeah.
They just felt like they didn't know. They weren't sure.
Well, and the thing is too, they probably got 9, 12, $18,000 commission riding on this deal. And they've probably experienced at some time in their career a home inspector that was a serious threat to that, because like you said, they're rolling the dice. If they get somebody who just came out of CE and they're vigilante, because that always seems to happen with us. It's like as soon as we CE's great, but it seems like that week or two after CE, we're all like vigilante inspectors.
Oh man, it's so true. And no guy's immune to this. It's part of the learning curve process. And I'm going to use Jason as an example, because Jason's one of the more successful guys on our team. People love this guy. But one of the things, there's two things that I'm trying to instill in him. One of them he's done really well with. The other, he's open to it, but he's not quite received the message yet. When I say it, you'll know, because you've been where I am, and I know that you'll understand it. One of them was the report writing process, where he had to find that balance. And one day I looked at one of his reports. It was like 105 pages long. I'm like, Jason, what are you doing? That's way too much stuff.
Like War and Peace.
It's like, yeah, I'm like, dude, but anyway, he did moderate to where he does a really thorough job and people respect it, but it's not to one side or the other.
Right.
And the other thing I'm trying to instill in most inspectors that I talk to is, you know what, there is no value in rushing around in an inspection, moving fast. I mean, you can, I guess, and you can probably do as good of a job, maybe, right? But if someone's watching you do that, if something should go wrong, they're going to recall that you were rushing around. And it's going to be part of the negative email you get later, where you were rushing around. I should have known this was going to happen. So when you do an inspection, I always feel like after you go through the learning curve and you're doing all these things, but just make sure physically on site that you're doing things methodically in a way where people always pretend people are watching, because they usually are.
Well, with all the cameras now too, I always say assume you're on camera, because there's a good chance you are, with all the nanny cams and doorbell and all that stuff
all over the place. But if they see you rushing around, it takes away from the value you bring. Because believe me, if you're sincere in your effort to do a good job, and you're physically looking the part, and they're getting a great product, and they're getting good communication, and at the end of the day, they're getting a good follow-up. You know what I mean? That's the complete picture. Then if something goes wrong later, They'd come back to you and say, listen, instead of being angry, most of the time they come back and say, I think you did a great job, but I'm having this problem. What do you think? Versus, you were rushing around. I didn't like the report. Everything looked like it was like half of what you promised. Now they're mad.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, and to add to your point, we just had our meeting, and I told the guys, I was like, if those people liked you, it goes back to communication. If they liked you, there's a lot less chance of a callback. And if there is a callback, there's a much more willingness to, let's figure out a solution that, doesn't remodel my whole kitchen because you missed something. They're much less likely to try to put the screws to, where, if they didn't like you, oh, look out. I mean, they're going to be actively looking for stuff to get you on. You know what I mean?
Oh, no doubt about it. You mentioned likability, and that's huge. And I think how you accomplish that, because a lot of guys, that doesn't come natural to,
Mm-hmm.
I had a sales and marketing background with some of the stuff I had done. I've done, one of the things home inspectors might have in common is we probably all done a gazillion things in our careers,
Right.
But I was a director of marketing for a healthcare facility. And, I learned a lot about people in that position, and likability is something that you can actually create a catalyst for when you're meeting people, just simply by taking an interest in them, learn who they are.
Right.
A nurse and a teacher, they process information differently than an accountant or an engineer. So why would you approach the nurse and the teacher with a bunch of technical information when all you're doing is you're sending them into like a, oh my God mode,
Right.
where you reserve that for the accountant and the engineer. Learn how to communicate with different types of people. The nurse and the teacher, they just want to know, am I going to regret doing this? Can you help me through this process? And that's where empathy and compassion are important with people who come from those backgrounds, who process information that way. It could be the same house, the same defects. It's just how you present them and communicate to the people.
Awesome.
An engineer is really likely to take all the bad news in stride because he's processing. You can talk as technically as you want to this guy. He's fine with it. But you do it to the teacher.
A different type of person.
Oh my God, right.
Yeah, so if the house is falling down, run.
Yeah, and then it's like, and if you can master that, if you can, I don't want to use the word master, if you can just figure out how to do that within your own personality. Every guy's able.
Reading people, reading people.
Yeah.
Well, and here's something I've kind of learned, Paul, too. Like a lot of times, it's a couple, that's buying the house, and it could be a guy, girl. I'm not saying, but a lot of times it's a couple, right? And out of that couple, it seems like there's truth that opposites attract a little bit. I've actually learned, this is getting off I'm going down a rabbit hole here for a second, but I read this book one time, and this guy was a marriage counselor for years. And somebody asked him, said, well, what is the most successful thing in a marriage? And he said, it's when people have similar values, but different temperaments. And I'm like, that is very true. That is very true. But my point, getting back to home inspections, is, and it's not usually what you think. There's usually one that's a little bit more the logical kind of, one, and there's one that's a little bit more emotional. And I know that some people might say, you're being sexist. Well, it's not who you would traditionally think always either. Sometimes it's
sure.
So, sometimes you got to realize who you're talking to. What the information that you want to present may change a little bit depending on who you want to talk to. And if there ever is a problem, there may be one person you kind of want to address. I hope I'm not. I know somebody might listen to this and say, Prince's a big old sexist. I'm not.
No,
does that make sense, what I'm trying to say?
I think it makes complete sense. And how you can kind of add to that, if you put everything, if you read people the right way, you can kind of learn to communicate with them. That's very valuable, but also balancing your communication. I remember one time, one of the guys that worked for our company just happened to sub something out to him. The real estate agent came back to me, and the buyer actually said, we weren't that comfortable with that guy. He used the term maintenance nightmare.
Sorry, I've got to clean.
That's okay.
Okay, you get that. No, I think that's great. Sorry.
He used the term maintenance nightmare in communicating with somebody, which you never want to use terms like that. Right. And I always look at it as like, if you're reporting on a roof, guys, to get into the technical part of this, and let's say you got shingles that definitely need to be replaced. You got enough damage replacement, right? So when you're presenting this to people, you say the roof's shot, it's got to be replaced. I mean, you can, I suppose, but did you go in the attic? What does the truss look like? What does the decking look like? How is everything underneath the shingles? Because if you could say, hey, look, we're looking at a shingle replacement, but I got to tell you, the decking, the framing, and everything underneath there looks great. So if you're able to present factually the big picture, don't just say the negative. Give them the real information, the truth, but be honest in your reporting. And honesty comes when you see wiring an electrical panel. Let them know. If it looks like, I always comment, because I've done electrical work, and let me tell you, my electrical work does not look this good. When you go to some of these places and you see a panel and how it's wired, it's almost a work of art, right?
Like electrical porn. It's like, wow.
I'm telling you, man, it's crazy. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I've run some wiring, and it was really difficult to be able to run stuff like that. But make it a point. Listen, this electrician, he did a really good job. Yeah, okay, I got 2 double tap
Trying to
breakers.
bring out
Those got to be fixed.
good things about the house, other than just giving them all bad news.
Yeah, balance it out. Learn who they are, talk their language, and give a balanced report. If you do that, I think you'll find success in our business.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We always try to, find something good. And here's a tip I'll give you and anybody listening. One thing that I've learned is, and I just, like you said, the full picture. So you're inspecting a house that's, 20 years old. Obviously at that 20-year mark, what are you thinking right away? You're thinking, if it hasn't been replaced, roof, HVAC, water heater, right? So here's a line that I always use. If you're inspecting a house that's 20 years old or not, I said these things wear out, just like on a car. If you own a 1957 Thunderbird, I'm positive you don't have the same belts, hoses, and tires that you originally had, because those things wear out and they have to be replaced. Now, here's the thing: they have different life expectancy. If you buy a house that's a pre-existing home, each one of those are somewhere on their life expectancy. Now, you could buy a brand new house and everything would be under warranty. It's all under warranty, and that's not a bad thing. But there is a little bit of a trade-off a lot of times. If you buy an existing home, you're probably going to experience appreciation a little bit quicker than if you buy a new home. Because if you buy a new home, everything's new, under warranty, that's great, but they're still building new ones down the street. So until that neighborhood fills out, it's going to be hard to experience appreciation, to sell your house when they can buy a brand new. Does that make sense? So there's trade-offs. So I always try to sell like, hey, you're buying an older home, you might have to replace that water heater in a couple of years. It's working fine, but it is a little older, but you're probably going to experience, the price appreciation. Plus you've got mature trees, things like that, where you're less likely to have that in a new neighborhood. But in a new neighborhood, everything's under warranty, so
again, that's great. I think it's great to be able to communicate with people those things, because a lot of people don't really think of those things.
Yeah, my water heater's shot, I need to buy another house, or my roof is bad, I need to buy another house.
Sometimes a water heater going bad is not a bad thing. You could have a water heater going bad in a small space, and then you could get a tankless one to replace it. And sometimes you gain storage space because of that. So there's always a positive for every negative or challenge.
Yeah.
And putting things in perspective like you just did, I think that was absolutely brilliant. And that's important, because a lot of people don't, they're in this transaction. There's a lot of stress there.
Well,
and
as home inspectors, we are trained to find the problems. We are problem finders. And, that puts a lot of stress on people who are already under a lot of stress, because, we're buying an investment house right now. And catch me at a certain time of day, I think I'm doing the greatest. And then I start having second thoughts. And then you go back and forth. So everybody buying a house is already making a big commitment. They're already on an emotional roller coaster, and a lot of times when people are buying a house, their new job, new kid, already have some life things that stress people. So I think it's a good idea to tell them the problems, but if there's some good things, tell them that and give them the full picture. I think that's brilliant.
Awesome. Well, as well as I do, it's like when you're there with people, most of them respect you.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well,
that
and
goes
the
across
realtor's
the
going to
board.
like you more too. I mean, again, I know there's some people out there that be like, oh, you're sugarcoating stuff. No, I'm not saying that. But, you know, if you got architectural shingles or a higher end HVAC system or something, you know, tell them. I mean, hey, that's a higher end unit there, you know, I mean, let them know.
Yeah, just, you know, I always like to do, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to realtors in any way, shape, or form, but for just a moment, hypothetically, take the realtor out of the picture in your brain. If you're an inspector, pretend the realtor's not there. You're only dealing with the buyer of a home and the seller of a home. So that's who you deal with. You work for the buyer,
Right.
but it does not make sense for you to be unfair or overzealous in one direction and disrespect this person who's selling their house. You are the inspector, you're the professional, you need to have the knowledge. But once you attain the knowledge and you put together a report for somebody, it's for the buyers who you represent. But in all fairness, if you do it properly in a way that's honest, truthful, and you communicate well, that seller is going to be a future client of yours or that seller's realtor. So if you take the real estate people out of the equation, and you treat these both parties right down the middle and fair, you can't go wrong. And that's really what it comes down to. I mean, the realtors, yeah, they're going to love that too, but this is not sugarcoating, to use that word you said. It's nothing to do with that. What it is it's a fair approach towards inspecting homes. Honesty goes a long way. Guys
Man, you
ask me all the
inspire me.
time, how
I'm gonna do
should I
it
write? Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, but you know, when you're talking to your guys, I'm sure you sound very similar to when they call me, how do I write this up? What do I do? My words are always the same. Be truthful and honest and pretend you're sitting at a bar and you're having a conversation with that person. Just write it up that way in a paragraph. And I don't think you could go wrong.
And don't assume, I mean, don't assume that you've got to break it down to where, you know, they may not know what a rake board is, or, you know, like you can't use technical, you know, just explain it like you're explaining it to my kid or something, you know, I mean, not trying to dumb it down, but just layman's terms. I mean, if a doctor told me stuff and used all those Latin terms, I wouldn't know what the heck they're talking about.
No,
break it down where I understand, you know.
Yeah, take the fear out of it, because usually people are a little bit reluctant to ask you maybe what something means. So rather than even go down that road, just speaking like you're speaking to a buddy. I mean, everyone's going to know what you're talking about if you just putting it in simple terms. It's not dumbing it down. What it is just creating a conversational common ground, you know?
Awesome. All right, Paul. Well, our time's almost up. I've had you here for about an hour, and I know you got stuff to do, but let's hit the lightning round real quick. Sure. Try to do this to fun. I didn't have a song lined up. Man, I wish I would have, because you're a musician. I usually do one that's finish these song lyrics. All right, this is lightning round, this or that. Couple of questions, just rapid fire. Ginger or Marianne?
Marianne.
Everybody, but one person has said Ginger. Football or basketball?
Football.
Christmas Vacation or Elf?
Christmas Vacation.
Animal House or Caddyshack?
Animal House.
Celebrity crush?
I don't know what that. I don't know who that would be, but I would have to say.
I'm go back to when you were a kid or something, you know.
Yeah, I'm kind of dating myself quite a bit here, but I would have to say Farrah Fawcett Majors.
That was mine, dude. I had that poster. The one
we all did.
And my mom hated it, man. She hated it. I know the one you're talking about. She's in a red bathing suit.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my mom hated that poster, man. If you could have dinner with anybody, anyone alive or dead, if you could have dinner with them, who would it be and why?
My father-in-law, because he was the person who inspired me to be an entrepreneur.
Gotcha. Craziest thing you ever found on an inspection? Now, remember, it's a G-rated show, or one of your guys. It could be one of your guys.
Craziest thing I've ever found at an inspection was actually a new construction home. I was doing a 1-year warranty, and I was walking the roof. And as I was walking the roof, I saw what looked like a little bit of deflection. So I walked on over there, put my foot on it, and my foot almost went right through, because it was supposed to be an off-ridge vent.
Oh, man. Wow. So they just went right.
They just shingled right over it, papered right. So when I went to the attic space, I looked up, and sure enough, there it was.
They got a cheap roofer is what they did. I mean, because those ridge vents are great. You would want to put that out. They just didn't want to do the extra cost.
Yeah, this was an off-ridge vent. But just so you know, I mean, Florida is one of these places where inspectors are here for a reason, because we have a lot of that.
Oh man. Last question, and then I want you to tell everybody your information again. If you went to bed tonight and woke up tomorrow morning in a brand new, just hypothetically here, brand new place, but it was the same size market that you're in now, you had all your equipment, all your guys, all your knowledge, room and board taken care of, but you don't know anybody, and you got $5,000 to get your business going. What are you doing with that $5,000? It's kind of an ROI question. Like what would be the best use of that $5,000 to get your business going? And again, computers, training, all that's taken.
I would look to see who in the area was the most productive in the real estate market, to see who's doing the most business. Then I would approach each and every one of them and ask them what charity they're passionate about. And I would take a portion of that money and make a donation. And then I would ask them what events are coming up and get on those schedules.
Boom, boom, man. Way to finish strong. Way to finish strong. Well, Paul, man, thank you so much. I know all the listeners got some value out of this. And if you got some value out of it, and you know you did, go buy the man's book. Go follow up with him. I know for sure this guy. Is there a way? You don't have to give your phone number, maybe an email. If somebody did want to follow up with you, what would that email be? And then where can they buy your book, and where can they find out more about you?
Okay, so my email is an easy one. It's paul@pjm-inc.com. And if you're local, I'm making it a habit to just sell the book to people locally. Just meet up with them, answer questions, sell the book at a discounted rate to them that way. If you're not local, you can get the book on Inspector Outlet, which is the Internachi store. I think it's inspectoroutlet.org or .com. I can't remember for sure. It's also on Facebook Marketplace. It's on my publisher's website, which is Legacy Book Publishing. They're in Winter Park, Florida. And I'm sorry that I forgot what the last thing was.
Your website or Facebook, so they could go check it out, give you help your algorithm a little bit, give you some likes.
Well, website is pjm-inc.com. Check out our team and stuff like that. And it's basically Home Inspections by PJM Inc. on Facebook. And when you check me out on Facebook, you might find YouTube. I just recently got back into recording music again, so I got 2 singles out there.
Nice.
Yeah, I got 2 singles out there.
What type of music is like? Give me an idea. What?
I'm mostly a classic rock 70s and 80s guy. I was a professional musician for a long time, and that's how I met my wife. But business has a way of taken away from that time. And then just recently I rediscovered the writing and recording. I have a studio in the house, so I play all the instruments, I do all the vocals and all that stuff. But I decided this, during COVID and then this part of this year, I'm like, I'm going to copyright these songs. It's 2 of them, and I'm just going to put them out there, just see what people think.
Dude, Nick, Nathan, Greg, any of you guys out there listening to this podcast who put on conferences, you should get this guy. You should pay him to perform during the conference. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. So I'm gonna try. They might
not like that. They might not like that classic rock show, though, man. I don't know anything past 1990.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, Paul, thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the flip side. And everybody out there listening, thank you guys for listening to the Successful Home Inspector Show. Stay tuned next week or week and a half for another episode. But go check Paul out and buy his book.